Elon is like tweeting like, we should really start to like decouple government jobs from the GDP calculations. I fucking wonder why. Like,
Right.
These guys are going to destroy the country, if not the world.
All right, everyone, warm up those brains. It's time for the Get More Smarter podcast. This one here is episode 227. I'm Jason Bain.
I'm Ian Silverii. This week on the Get More Smarter podcast, baby of the show, Sam Silverii, made quite a bit of news this week as his mom had to schlep him across the country just to be able to do her job, forcing Mike Johnson and Republicans to scramble to lock down all of their votes on the worst budget resolution we've seen in our lifetimes. Then, town halls are back, and they're making the 2017 set look like cute little coffee clatches. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and JD Vance are destroying the country and possibly the world, and it looks like people are quickly taking notice. But before we get started today, a quick housekeeping note. We want to make sure you know where you can find us because we're in like different places now, and we're all over the place now. We are no longer on Threads because Mark Zuckerberg sucks. We're still on Instagram because we kind of have to be, so we don't have that much moral authority here. I think we just like lost the login to our Facebook account, so like don't look for us there either.
I don't even know. I haven't seen Facebook in a long time.
But the two places you can find us where we do a lot of posting and interacting these days are YouTube, where you can find the video version of the show. If you haven't tuned into that yet, you can see how many different fucking pairs of glasses I bought recently. Or Blue Sky, where we have sort of an unusual number of followers and do quite a bit of posting these days. It sort of like started as like a nicotine patch for the Twitter addiction, and now is like a full-blown 3 packs a day habit once again. Anyway, I'm sort of kind of back. At least for now, we had this interview. I don't know if I'll be here next week. I don't know if Jason will be here next week. We're going to keep trying to do shows though. So
we don't know if anyone will be here next week.
We don't know if anybody will be here next week, but if you're here next week, do us a favor and review the show. If you have an iPhone, go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We really need them. It helps the show grow. We've had a huge number of watchers and subscribers on YouTube, so bang over to that channel too. Oh, and don't forget to sign up for bonus content in our Substack while you're at it. Yes, Substack, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Podcatcher of your choice is where you can find the Get More Smarter podcast. You want to talk about all the crazy shit going on in the world now?
We're everywhere, yeah. We were joking about this before we started recording. I was almost done with our outline, and then this stuff at the White House blew up with the Ukrainian president. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it's exhausting.
It's the news fire hose. Remember what we were saying at the end of the election when we were pretty sure Kamala Harris was going to win?
Yeah.
Well, at least we'll never have to think about Donald Trump ever again, and the news fire hose won't be as bad. Oh, it's worse than it ever has been before now, isn't it?
It is unreal. It is. It's impossible to keep track of it all. As we talk about when we get to Trump time, we're trying to keep you appraised of the most important stuff, but even that is so hard to do because a lot of these things are important.
The zone is flooded. The zone is fully flooded. We are underwater with news. And like, we can barely do this once a week. We can't do this more than once a week. So we're going to keep you up to date as much as possible while making sure that we're covering the important Colorado stuff.
Yes.
But also, like, whatever's going on the national level is going to impact all of us as well. And like to your point, you're going to miss stuff because of how much is going on all the time. So we are going to do our best to curate the news just for you.
That's right. Well, let's start this week with what was the big news, the House Republican budget. Republicans with, like a 2-vote margin, I think, passed an initial budget proposal.
Yeah, they lost 1 vote. Rep. Tom Massey of some godforsaken red state. Kentucky, let's go with that. And actually, they're not a godforsaken red state. I shouldn't say that. They have a Democratic governor, smart people on the ground.
Godforsaken
red district. Yeah, fair enough. He voted no. Every other Republican voted yes, including every member of Colorado's Republican congressional delegation. So, Gabe Evans can kiss his ass. Absolutely goodbye for this one. And Jeff Crank is putting himself in a little too much trouble, a little too early, in my opinion.
Yeah. This is the proposal that will likely slash Medicaid funding that would impact some 1.3 million Coloradans.
Yep. And it's $880 billion with a B dollars in Medicaid that they're going after. There's all these lies about there, including ones proffered by our 8th favorite member of Congress from the 4th congressional district, who said that everyone who voted against this voted for taxing tips and taxing overtime. That wasn't in the fucking thing at all.
No.
This is basically like the framework for the budget that they're going to have to pass through committee.
So the good news is it's not there yet.
No, this didn't do the horrible draconian cuts that we're talking about quite yet. It sets the stage for them to be able to do that. But because they have such a slim margin, and I honestly think a couple of these Republican congressional seats are going to be in play. There's 3, like Matt Gaetz's and some of these other ones. There's another one in Florida and then Elise Stefanik's in New York. Those seats should have been totally out of reach for any Democrat running, but I think they're going to be competitive and they're going to be in play. We might even win 1 or 2 of them. If we do, we can actually take the House. And if not this time, then certainly in 2026. But you're going to see Republican members of Congress finding reasons to vote against this. I'd be very surprised if the actual budget actually passed.
I would too. I mean, it's political seppuku if you're a Republican. I mean, you don't recover by cutting. Like in Gabe Evans' situation, we'll talk about this more in a second. 1 in 3 children in his district rely on Medicaid CHIP funding. How do you get reelected after cutting that? You don't.
You hopefully lose your seat and then you are humiliated for the rest of your life out of public life. You're gone.
Well, we'll start with something you mentioned in the intro. Congresswoman of the show, Brittany Pedersen, flew to Washington, D.C. for the vote and delivered a great speech holding baby of the pod, Sam Silverii. Let's take a look at that.
Oh, yeah, she fucking kicks ass.
Well done.
So proud of her.
Well done.
It has been a really hard week around here.
But she got national headlines for this, and deservedly so.
The Google alerts are ceaseless. Wall to wall, Vanity Fair, New York Times. You know, go Google. My mom texted me this morning. She's like, "Have you Googled your wife? She's famous." Yeah, I know. But she shouldn't have had to be.
Right.
So like, a little look under the hood, I guess. Like, Sam's a month old. She's breastfeeding him. That's like the best food you can give your kid, right? If he wasn't able to travel with her or she didn't take him, we would have had to put him on formula or something like that. And like,
or you'd be breastfeeding.
It's good enough. You know, I tried. Doesn't work. Nothing comes out. Just dust. But like, it's dramatically unfair. And we've talked about this in the show before. Brittany has this bipartisan resolution with a bunch of people, Republicans she doesn't agree with on anything, and another Democratic colleague of hers that would just allow new parents for 8 weeks of proxy voting. Basically say, here, Jonah Goose, here, Jason Crow, you know, here, Diana DeGette, take my card. I want to be a yes or a no on these bills that are up, and they can just cast the vote for them. Mike Johnson would not allow it, even though he voted by proxy 40 times during the pandemic whenever he saw fit. Byron Donaldson, a congressman from Florida, routinely gives his voting card to other people, according to reporting. In one instance, so he could go to film an episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. That, for the Republicans, is totally fine, but Brittany being able to vote by proxy because she's a new mother, first when she was under flight restrictions before she gave birth, and now because flying across the country with the 4-week-old is a huge nightmare, she did it anyway. I'm so proud of them. Not for nothing, apparently Sam is like pretty good on an airplane. We're getting him habituated early to the life that we have here.
Nice.
And I'm just so proud of her for standing up. She got like Hillary Clinton's like posting about her and like
nice.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And man, it was pretty weird.
Well, all Colorado Democrats opposed the budget. All Colorado Republicans voted in favor.
All Democrats opposed the budget. Every single one in the whole country. The other person who had to make the trip across the country, Representative Kevin Mullen from California, flew after major surgery with an IV in his arm using a walker.
Yeah, that's but I mean, good on him for voting no on this.
Podcast viewers, here's a picture of Brittany, Sam, and Rep. Kevin Mullen from California that you can see here. Brittany would smoke him.
But Sam, she has to hold Sam. That makes it fair. Yeah. So on the other side, Republicans, we talked about Gabe Evans, the freshman from the 8th Congressional District, one of the most vulnerable incumbent Republicans in 2026. He released this silly walk and talk video on social media following the vote. Let's take a look. Not true. Nope.
It will be one of the last votes this guy takes in his short motherfucking career.
As Caitlin Kim of Colorado Public Radio wrote on Twitter or X or whatever.
We're never calling it X.
Yeah. quote, context, the resolution Rep. Evans voted on does none of the things he says.
Yeah, don't take it from Jason or me. Take it from Colorado Public Radio's excellent Washington reporter, the only reporter that anyone in Colorado sends to D.C. routinely, Caitlin Kim.
She's on top of it. She says it's a framework that sets out how much some committees have to cut and how much more some committees will get to enact changes. We won't know policies until we get bill text. We talk about Medicaid being cut because it's really one of the only plausible ways this budget could work.
There's nowhere else to get that many cuts. Like, there's nowhere else to find $800 billion in the budget. Like, right. Elon Musk has fired half of the federal workforce, I guess, all by himself, and that's a drop in the bucket.
Right. So they have to do that.
They have to do it. It's the only place to get it.
We talked last week about how Americans seem to be waking up to the Trump terror, and boy, are they showing up in person now, too. There was the town hall we discussed in Georgia last week with that woman with the real strong Georgian accent yelling at the Republican representative.
Is that McCormick?
Maybe.
It was Dave McCormick.
Roughly 1,500 people attended a recent town hall for Congressman Jason Crow in the 6th Congressional District. Do we have that picture?
Yeah, and he said that this was 3 times the number of people who have ever come to a town hall of his. Look at this crowd shot. It's wall to wall. It is absolutely packed in there.
Absolutely crazy. Joe Neguse has also held several recent town halls, attracting hundreds of people. Republicans in Colorado are generally not doing town halls because when they do, they don't go well, like that one in Georgia and this batshit crazy story in Idaho.
Oh, God, this is wild.
This is from KTVB TV.
How
the hell do they do that on a regular basis in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho?
We begin with continuing coverage after a woman was dragged out of a legislative town hall in North Idaho over the weekend. She was originally cited for battery for allegedly biting a security officer. But as of this afternoon, those charges were dropped by the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. Abby, well, you've been following this. And Abby, we heard from people who were at the meeting yesterday. What other details have you learned today?
Hunter, yes. So I spoke with the organizers of that legislative town hall today. It was hosted by the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. They say Teresa Boren-Paul, the woman dragged out of the meeting, was removed because she interrupted the meeting at least 7 times. Boren-Paul is a known figure in North Idaho. She has run for office several times as a Democrat.
Quietly listen. I promise we will. She
was warned at least 3 times, please behave. If you can't behave, you're going to be asked to leave. Ms. Boren-Paul interrupted or shouted out or at least 7 times that we counted on video.
Can't do that in America.
Paul didn't respond to requests to leave the meeting. 3 security officers were called in to physically move her.
Please don't touch me. Please don't touch me. Please don't touch me.
The security team refused to identify themselves, but grabbed Boren-Paul's arms and legs and dragged her out of the high school auditorium where the town hall was being held. You can hear some people in the video cheering while others yelled at the guards to let the woman go. Kootenai County Republican Central Committee's chairman Brent Regan now says Boren-Paul needed to be removed because she wasn't following KCRCC's rules.
Jesus.
The security that was hired there has since lost their license in Idaho because apparently they did not identify themselves. They had no badges.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It just looked like people just yanking her out of her seat and literally dragging her across the floor for speaking up.
I want to bring it back real quick to Colorado because we have some versions of this. Obviously, no one getting dragged out, but our favorite bread sandwich, who, we were actually starting to feel a little bit better about because he was doing some light criticism of Donald Trump. Oh, boy. He had a couple town halls that were scheduled, and egads, they did not go well. Here's from the Durango Herald. Rep. Jeff Hurd staffer left event site after seeing crowd at Dolores Public Library. Montezuma County Sheriff ordered to escort regional director in and out of location. Here's one from KJCT in Grand Junction. Rep. Hurd criticized for not attending town hall meeting hosted by Progressive Group. This is reminiscent of the good old cardboard Corey town halls from back in the day. This one from the Cortez Journal. Hundreds gather in Dolores to meet with Rep. Jeff Hurd's staffer. Subhead, Republicans regional director never showed up. Here again from the Durango Herald. Some more news. U.S. Rep. Hurd backs budget resolution which could lead to cuts in Medicaid funding. House resolution competes with Senate version, signaling Republican disunity. And finally, Western Slope CD3 residents gather for town hall without Rep. Jeff Hurd. Is this familiar, Jason?
It is very familiar, and it's the reason they're not doing these now. It's coming down from Republicans in leadership saying, don't hold town halls. Here's NBC News.
Yep.
I'm Charlie Keegan outside Random's Coffee in downtown Belton. Monday morning, a huge crowd showed up to speak with Representative Mark Alford. This was the first time he'd held this kind of town hall style event since Trump took office.
I can't hear her follow up.
The people who made it into the coffee shop were talking over each other, calling Alford names, and booing his answers. Alford stood there for an hour and a half, answering the questions, even if most of his answers towed the Republican talking points, which only antagonized the crowd. The people here live inside and outside Alford's district. They covered everything from Elon Musk to the Ukrainian war, along with immigration, laying off federal employees. Alford told the crowd he feels bad for people who've lost their jobs at places like the IRS, and that God has a plan for them.
You are not you are a victor, and you will be able to get another job and provide for yourself and your family. I'm confident of that.
We are the hardworking federal employees that make this government run every single day. And we are being discounted by those in Washington claiming that we're the swamp and we're the fraud, waste, and abuse. No.
Alford's team said it'll look for a larger venue for the next event of this style. They don't have a date on the calendar yet. Charlie Keegan, KSHB 41.
That's fucking Missouri.
Yeah.
Didn't you go to school there?
I did, yeah. I haven't been back since.
So Republicans, instead of holding town halls and facing the music, are just running the fuck away.
Yeah.
Which, again, does not work out well for them.
No. I mean, we saw this on the other side with, well, actually, I was going to say the Tea Party, but Democrats didn't run away from that.
No.
You can't, this is one of the main reasons Cory Gardner lost his reelection bid for Senate, because he refused to talk to his own constituents. People remember when you do this.
Oh, yeah. They remember if you're present or not. They remember if you're accessible or not. I mean, look, Brittany's not one of these people that likes to get a lot of attention. She's not like a media hog. She doesn't do the spotlight thing. She's not on social media a ton. It's just not the way she does it. She prefers to be a little lower key. The fact that she got so much attention simply for showing up to do her job under pretty difficult circumstances shows that people are just looking for fighters. They're looking for people who are going to go above and beyond right now. And just by being a Republican, you are in bed with this, you are saddled with this, and you voted for this. You voted for this when you supported Donald Trump. You voted for this when you refused to stand up to him, when you let Elon Musk take a fucking chainsaw and a flamethrower to the entire country. And now you're going to have to face the music in front of your voters, or you're going to face the music in 2026 for sure. Gabe Evans still hasn't had a town hall. Jeff Crank still hasn't had a town hall. Jeff Hurd has run away from a few of them.
Right. Is Jeff Crank is he real? Is he a real person?
I've never met him. I believe he exists because there is a certified election with his name on it. But yeah, he hasn't really showed up very much, has he?
No, haven't seen a thing from him. He's down in the 5th Congressional District in Colorado Springs. Which
I will bet you anything that district is competitive in 2026.
Yeah, I bet so.
This is the kind of thing that shifts the political environment dozens of points.
All right, it's Trump time.
We hate Trump time.
We do.
They're 2 months into 48 months. I just want to lay that down for you.
Yeah. As we mentioned earlier, our goal here is to help you break through the flood the zone policy to focus on the things that are more important than others. One of those things are the continued firings and cuts from Prime Minister Elon Musk. He had that email last week where he demanded federal employees submit their 5 achievements of the week or risk being fired. That kind of flopped, but
while his fucking company is absolutely tanking in every single way, oh my God, maybe he needs to send an email with the 5 things he did last week.
Yeah, no kidding.
Tesla board.
The firings are still happening even after a federal judge ruled that a recent round of mass firings of federal workers were likely illegal. Here's Kyle Clark at 9 News with the latest and how it affects Colorado.
Hundreds of federal employees who do weather forecasting and oversee climate research lost their jobs today. The latest federal layoffs by the Trump administration are hitting 2 agencies that have pretty prominent roles in Colorado. The Associated Press says the cuts impact probationary employees, so that's new and promoted folks, at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the National Weather Service. Scientists at NOAA provide weather watches and warnings. They do climate research, and they operate America's weather satellites. It's not immediately clear how many employees have been laid off or whether the cuts will impact the employees at the National Weather Service offices in Boulder, Pueblo, and Grand Junction. NOAA spokesperson wouldn't talk about it.
This shit is straight out of Project 2025. Do you know that? Privatizing the weather service is like a weird goal of these fucking ghouls because there isn't a single thing that they don't want to try and just like rip money out of and shove into their own pockets in the entire country. And this is going to have devastating consequences. At the same time, you're firing all of the weather service and NOAA staffer. You're eviscerating the fucking air traffic controllers.
Right.
You know what's pretty important? Weather and air traffic control to global commerce and travel.
Yeah, we kind of need to know. And, you know, all these private companies that report weather, or even like the news media that reports weather, you know where they get all that? NOAA.
From the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service, of course.
Right. That's where that comes from.
No, they just want to privatize everything so they can profit off of everything, so they can increase the wealth gap even more, make peasants of all of us, and make themselves somehow even richer. How the fuck is $200 billion not enough money?
Right. Congressman Joe Neguse and Senators Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper are demanding an investigation into these firings. They are focusing their ire on the Deputy Inspector General at the Department of Commerce, which employs the National Weather Service and NOAA. They're asking why this is happening, what the reasoning is, how it's going to be mitigated. We'll see what happens.
And people who are like interested in getting attention on the internet and like scoring points instead of like trying to beat these fucking fascists back to the goddamn like history bins are saying things like, oh, you're writing strongly worded letters. They're in the minority. What they can do is demand independent investigations,
right.
And that's a good fucking thing to do.
Absolutely.
We need to and they should be doing this for everything. Every single department that has been eviscerated by these freaks needs to have an independent investigation by an inspector general who is not tied to this administration, who is not some fucking political appointee or some lackey or some toady, to go in and figure out exactly what damage has been done and if there's a goddamn chance to undo it. We learned last week that the appointee, Chris Wright, right? Liberty Oilfield Services guy from Colorado running the Department of Energy, accidentally fired all the nuclear scientists in charge of keeping the weapon stockpile safe. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, not a good idea. Former defense chiefs, meanwhile, are calling for congressional hearings into the Trump administration's firing of top military brass.
Mostly because they're black or women or people of color. And they're being replaced with less qualified white dudes.
Right.
Amazing.
Trump last week abruptly fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was only the second black person to serve as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Chief of Naval Operations Adam Lisa Franchetti and Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force General Jim Slife were also fired. Franchetti was the second top female military officer fired by the Trump administration after they axed Coast Guard Commandant Admiral Linda Fagan early in the administration.
And they also fired all the JAG lawyers.
Yeah.
Do you know this?
Yeah.
Who are basically ostensibly responsible for enforcing the law and defending people in court who were when there are military questions. You don't do that. You don't get rid of all the JAG attorneys unless you plan on breaking a shit ton of laws.
That's right. Some Republicans, at least, are starting to speak up a little bit. State Senator Mark Catlin of Montrose, a Republican here in Colorado, said, quote, "The Forest Service is already understaffed at a time when public land visitation is at record levels." He says, "We're public land heavy, so I don't want to see us get cut back to the point where we're not able to take care of the local community and all different forms of our economy. The pressures are getting bigger, so I'm worried about being understaffed," unquote.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, That's the only molecule of courage I've seen from any Republican anywhere, and it's like
Absolutely.
a state senator who's kind of viewed as one of these broadly bipartisan guys. Fine, good, thank you. Like, hope he doesn't get a primary from a MAGA freak, but, probably will.
New polling from Navigator Research, meanwhile, shows Americans are very concerned about the federal firings. 3 in 5 Americans say they are either very concerned or somewhat concerned, and they should be.
Yeah, I thought this was really interesting because the vibe was sort of like, sorry, nobody cares about all these government employees getting axed, and they only care about themselves and their own jobs. And I think that's probably like a somewhat accurate reading of the electorate in normal times, but like people are kind of seeing this torrent of shit flying at them every second of the day. And eventually, like, things are going to stop working. Taxes are due soon. People want their refunds in a timely manner. There's no fucking way that's going to happen. Social Security checks going out. People who are on Medicaid, Medicare need their services. You cannot simply deliver the same amount of services at the same quality with half the staff. This isn't fucking Twitter. This isn't some goddamn tech company. This is the United States government. It doesn't work like a business. It shouldn't be run like a business because it isn't a fucking business.
Well, and as Congressman Joe Neguse said in our interview last week, these federal employees are your neighbors. You know these people.
No, they're villainous, faceless bureaucrats who are sucking off the teat of government and doing nothing on lunch break all day long, Jason.
But the reason people are concerned is because they know these people and they see what happens.
Absolutely.
One issue that is getting less coverage is that the elimination of many federal grants and programs is starting to lead to massive layoffs at private companies that rely on this federal funding. We don't know the numbers yet, but I imagine this total is going to be staggering. The impact on the economy will be equally terrible. You get these people in private companies that a lot of their funding comes from federal grants or other sources. Those grants get pulled. They got to lay off all these people.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
and then, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. As the Atlantic reports, the National Institutes of Health is still not awarding its usual research grants, despite a court order that rejected the Trump administration's freezing of federal funds in January.
And do you know what we're talking about here? We're talking about cancer research. We're talking about Alzheimer's research. We're not talking about gain-of-function vaccine conspiracy bullshit from lunatics. We're talking about things that are going to save your mom's life or doom her to death. I think it is pretty obvious that Democrats should be and are starting to say these guys are gutting cancer research every day.
Yep.
This is not victimless. Elon Musk stands in front of the entire cabinet in a fucking baseball hat and a t-shirt and says, we accidentally killed Ebola defense for a little while there. Whoops-a-daisy. It's not cute.
No. I mean, if anyone's not familiar with Ebola, if that, God forbid, got out into a population,
it's game over.
We're dead.
Do you remember, the Obama Ebola scare that was not a thing? That they, trumped up the private server that Hillary Clinton had. Meanwhile, these guys are exporting the entire federal government on thumb drives to SpaceX headquarters or whatever the fuck. The hypocrisy knows absolutely no bounds. Apparently, people don't give a shit about that. But, please just apply the same standards.
Yeah. And the other item that really popped up more, actually today, is our new entrance into villainhood. Russia, North Korea, and now the United States.
Yep. I forget. Maybe it was friend of the show, Tim Miller, that said this. There's a new axis of evil, and Trump is having us join it.
And it's us. Yeah. The U.S. voted with Russia, North Korea, and 15 other Moscow-friendly countries against a UN resolution condemning Russian aggression in Ukraine. As we mentioned last week, President Trump has been saying, which is completely untrue, that the war in Ukraine was started by Ukrainians, despite the fact that everyone in the world watched Russia literally invade Ukraine in February 2022.
There's a pretty good screen grab of Pete Hegseth, then Fox News host, standing in front of a chyron where he is pointing out the places where Russia is invading Ukraine, and the chyron says Russia invades Ukraine.
Right. There's not...
This is not in doubt. This is not up for debate.
No. Today, as we're recording on Friday, Ukraine's president was at the White House and got into a shouting match with President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. Let's go down to this one here.
The Caitlin Collins. Oh, which one? Oh, got it.
We've got 2 clips of it, and this is embarrassing and shameful.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now,
Which is what you're doing.
Around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to
come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens if you bring people, bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President.
Seen it on a map.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're in no
Fucking
position
embarrassing.
to dictate
It's not a
what
real
we're going to
estate
feel.
transaction.
We're going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm
Yeah,
very
you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III. You're
Oh,
gambling
Jesus.
with
You
World
can't
War
say
III.
that.
And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I
Back
will
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot
Entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting,
Today.
you
Did I
went
ever say thanks?
and campaigned for the opposition in October.
you
Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
You mean Biden?
Jesus Christ.
Hey, here's a statement
My
from...
heart rate went up during that whole thing. I don't know about you. Like, that's
Yeah.
just, it's really, really, really bad. We've switched sides.
I've never seen this in my life.
It's never happened before. The United States has switched sides from being the defender of global democracy and against authoritarians and oligarchs to the country selling us out to the absolute lowest bidder. Not even the highest bidder, the lowest bidder.
Look at this statement from Trump on Truth Social. This is what a child would write. At least it's not in all caps, I guess.
It says, statement from President Donald J. Trump. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in a cherished Oval Office. He can come. What he wants is to give the fucking country to Vladimir Putin is what he wants.
Right.
Here's a tweet from NBC reporter Caitlin Collins that I think says a lot. She said, what just happened in the Oval Office is nothing short of remarkable. What began with questions about security guarantees for a ceasefire with Ukraine turned into an angry shouting match between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky. Trump was fuming, ending with, we have empowered you to be a tough guy. You either make a deal or we are out. You don't have the cards. Here's from former Obama White House foreign policy advisor Ben Rhodes. I think this is well stated, too. These are not political news cycle issues. Trump is transforming what the United States is as a country in the world into a far-right, authoritarian, transactional, valueless oligarchy aligned with the world's autocracies. That's why you're voting the same way as Russia and North Korea, because you have become a valueless oligarchy.
Yeah. And how long can Republicans stay quiet about this? The Atlantic is asking every member of Congress 2 questions. 1, did Russia invade Ukraine? 2, is Vladimir Putin a dictator? Only 25 of 271 Republicans in the House have responded. One of them is Coloradans Jeff Hurd, our own bread sandwich, said, quote, did Russia invade Ukraine? Russia's invasion of Ukraine was an unprovoked act of war. Russian President Vladimir Putin is a dictator. Vladimir is undisputedly an enemy of America and a dictator. It is dishonorable and wrong not to stand up against the tyranny of Putin, unquote.
Good. Now show up to your town hall and say that to your people, and you'll get a bunch of claps.
Right. Gabe Evans, crickets. Lauren Boebert, crickets. Jeff Crank, who may or may not exist, crickets.
Yeah, this podcast cannot produce proof that Jeff Crank is
A real
actually
person.
a real person or a member of Congress, even though we have certified election results that say opposite.
All right, let's turn our attention more directly to Colorado, where the 2026 election is starting to heat up a bit.
Yeah, and that's kind of just where we are now. We're in a permanent news cycle, all this stuff. I've disclosed that I was working with Attorney General Phil Weiser to help him launch his campaign for governor. He was the first statewide candidate announced, but since then, we've had a few more jump into a few different slots, haven't we?
Yeah, and the timing is different here, I think, because remember, Republicans have not come within single digits in a statewide race since, I don't know, 2014?
Yeah, I mean, Cory
Roughly?
Gardner won by 1.2 or 1.8%.
He lost by
I'm
9.5.
rusty
I guess
on
it
this.
sort of came within, he was the closest.
Yeah. I was talking about in 2014 when he beat Mark Udall.
Right.
And then in 2016, Heidi Ganahl winning the CU Regent race. That was the last time a Republican won a statewide election in Colorado. That was almost 10 years ago. By the time the 2026 election rolls around, it will have been a decade since a Republican won any statewide election in Colorado.
So that makes the primary election in June 2025 basically the election for
The Democratic primary
Democrats.
election.
Yeah, the Democratic primary election.
Importantly.
So in the race for governor this week, we had State Senator Mark Baisley of Roxborough Park. He'd already announced his intentions, but he has formally filed to run for governor. I don't know if he can win a Republican primary. There is no chance in hell he can win a general election.
No, he might win a Republican primary because he might be the least crazy of the field. So he might just kind of default into it in an open primary state. But he's not going to be governor of Colorado.
No, not at all. You can put that in Sharpie.
Yep.
On the Attorney General's race, which is open because Phil Weiser is term limited, Boulder District Attorney Michael Doherty announced this week he's the clear favorite, as far as I'm concerned, endorsed by others such as friend of the pod, Jeffco DA Alexis King.
I guess we got to get Doherty on the show, huh?
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Doherty, remember, ran for Attorney General in 2018 before switching to get the appointment for an open office as the district attorney in Boulder County.
And then was handily reelected and handled the King super shooting case, I think, admirably and very well.
Yeah. I mean, he's like central casting prosecutor guy.
He looks like the dudes from The Wire. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's great.
Also entering the race for Attorney General this week is former House Speaker Crisanta Duran. I don't understand this. She's been casting about for some sort of office to run for since she was term limited out of the House in 2018. She made a run against Diana DeGette briefly in a Democratic primary. She lasted about 4 months. Couldn't raise more than a few nickels. I don't see how this goes anywhere, but,
No, me neither. And I have a little bit of a long and complicated relationship with the former majority leader for my speaker. But I'll just leave this text message that I got up here. It's the second one I got of the day, and there's a picture of the former speaker, and it says, "Ian, we haven't met yet. We actually worked together for a very long time." So that was pretty weird to see that pop up in the old inbox.
Yeah, she's just going through the motions a little bit, and I don't know, hoping someone will care that she did. And then for state treasurer, State Rep Brianna Titone of Arvada announced she would be the only the second transgender person elected to a statewide office in the country.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan. She's Jeffco Dem. We've known each other for a really long time. I think she's doing a great job down there. Takes on really cool, important issues like the right to repair. We've talked about this on the show before, where it was John Deere and Apple wouldn't let you repair your own tractor or your own iPhone. You have to pay them a bunch of money if something that they built breaks, which feels insane. And she kind of kicked off a national wave of legislation like this. State treasurer is one of those roles that is pretty important if you do it. We had a great episode a couple of years ago where we got to go visit current state treasurer Dave Young in the vault and take a look at everything from the world's smallest gun to a gigantic diamond that are in the state vault.
That was fun.
I also think that at the moment, considering, she's the front runner for the race because she's the only serious candidate announced right now. There's another one in there we'll talk about in a second. But you can expect some of these other races to get a little more crowded because, let's face it, there's just not a lot of races, and there's 4 open statewide seats for a bunch of people who were termed out of like state legislative offices.
Right. The other candidate who is formally in that race on the Democratic side is Jeffco Treasurer Jerry DiTullio. I don't know that anybody really takes him that seriously. And
we'll find out.
They, frankly. All right, let's do a couple of quick hits and then we'll get out of here. Speaking of candidates for 2026 or former candidates.
This was a real whipsaw, huh?
Yeah. We told you last week that Rich Guggenheim, the Colorado chapter leader and national legislative director of Gays Against Groomers, an anti-LGBTQ group, even though it's made up of LGBTQ people, I don't understand any of that. He had filed to run against Democrat Jason Crow in the 6th congressional district, but now he's out.
Yeah, he was like a Democrat, and he was an unaffiliated. Maybe he's like a third-party guy in between that, something like that. And then he ran as a Republican. He doesn't even live in the district, and he launches this campaign against Congressman Crow, and then runs away really, really fast.
As the Colorado Times reporter explains, Guggenheim quit after getting sad that local Republican officials criticized his outfit. I'm not kidding. Here's what the Times reporter writes, quote, Guggenheim wrote on Facebook that he is suspending his campaign for Congress. In the post, he said that after announcing his campaign at a Republican event the night before, an Arapahoe County Republican official told him that if I was to be a candidate, to never come dressed the way I did. According to Guggenheim, he was wearing a purple button-down and black slacks at the time.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know.
I guess. It's, you know what? He wasn't wearing a blue suit with a white shirt and a red tie, which is the official costume of the Republican Party everywhere now.
I just love that
someone
says something about his outfit. He's like,
"Fuck
you, I'm not running."
Well, hey, you know what? There are
making a stand.
There are more fragile glass jaws in this business.
We've got a new thing I think we're going to do in our quick hits every week. The FAFO of the week. Fuck around and find out. From my new favorite Reddit thread, Leopards Ate My Face. Here's a guy named Dan Thomas who says, quote, I've been a steadfast conservative for decades. While I was initially skeptical of Trump, I've since become a devoted supporter, fully embracing his leadership and vision. But now, after being laid off from the GSA, I find myself in a tough spot, struggling to stay afloat and wondering how I can continue to support the cause when I can barely afford to live. Any advice from fellow patriots?
Yeah, you should have voted for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for this guy and for these people who are finding out the hard way that
I don't know.
their
I
votes
can't
have material impacts on their lives too. The major problem with all of this is that they voted for a guy whose central premise of his campaign was, I am going to do fucking violence and harm to people that you don't like. Vote for me and they will be hurt. And they said, fuck yeah, let's go. And now that they're getting hurt, it's any advice from fellow patriots? And it's very hard to feel bad for them. But I still have a few molecules of empathy knocking around in my brain. So I do have
the only
some
upside, I think, of this, hopefully, and this is my glass half full take, is that hopefully what's happening now will convince more of the electorate to pay some attention to what they're doing when they're voting. This was not a surprise.
I agree with you there, but I guess remember, there were so many people who were Googling, on election day, did Joe Biden drop out?
Right. Well, that's what I mean, though. Maybe now people will look a little bit and realize, oh, it kind of does matter who I vote for.
It really, really matters who you vote for. And you don't have to make contact with politics every single day of your life. You don't have to be dorks like us. You can tune in and tune out. But when you tune in, just look around a little bit. Take these guys seriously. You should have looked up Project 2025. Everything they're doing right now is in there.
Yeah. This Dan Thomas guy, I'd have told you were going to get fired.
Yeah,
if you'd asked.
Absolutely. You work for the General Services Administration?
Yeah. Colorado Republicans are doing what now? Let's go back to 9 News and Kyle Clark.
Friend of the pod.
Some Republicans want President Trump to withhold federal funds from Colorado unless Democratic Governor Jared Polis agrees to pardon Tina Peters. The former Mesa County clerk is a sort of celebrity and martyr in election rigging conspiracy circles. She was convicted of felonies for breaching her county's voting systems in an unsuccessful search for voter fraud. Peters is a few months into serving a 9-year sentence. She has remained unapologetic and defiant about what she did. Peters cannot be pardoned by President Trump because she was convicted on state charges, not federal charges. So it is up to Governor Polis whether to release her early. Colorado Republicans have been appealing to the Trump administration to pressure Polis by withholding federal funding from Colorado until Peters is set free, or by launching federal investigations into key players in Peters' case. The Colorado Republican Party's Director of Special Initiatives, Darcy Schoening, who's running for state party chair right now, says along with pulling funding to put the squeeze on Polis, she says she's been in touch with the U.S. Attorney General's office about prosecuting the judge
a Republican
in county who sentenced Peters. Schoening told me that the judge should reflect on what he did, which she called corruption, when he's locked up in the state pen in Canyon City. Governor Polis has tried to find common ground with the Trump administration lately. And today, his spokesperson dodged when we asked if Polis was considering pardoning Tina Peters, or if he would do it if Trump put the screws to him. Polis's spokesperson would only say that Peters has not yet applied for a pardon.
Just
She's
say
not gonna
no.
get a fucking pardon. Yeah. No.
No.
No way.
No.
Also, that's like 6 levels of extortion and blackmail
Right.
and like everything evil. What are we doing? Holy shit. These are the guys who are like, you've weaponized the justice system against President Trump because he like broke a bunch of laws and like got convicted of a felony by a fucking grand jury. Now they're gonna like do the same thing but worse that they're accused Democrats of doing.
I just don't understand why they're spending all this time talking about Tina Peters. Like, there's no upside for them.
The
upside
upside for them is they want attention, and that's the only thing they care about because they can never win a fucking election in the state.
Yeah, that's true. And finally, our gibberish of the week. Here's Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
A
saying
frequent
federal jobs
gibberish,
are not real jobs.
Freaking gibberish flyer.
You can protest all you want outside of departments of this government. You can protest all you want, but the American people disagree with you. You're protecting the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is not a business. Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. By the way, they're consuming taxpayer dollars. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people who work real jobs, earn real income, pay federal taxes, and then pay these federal employees. Federal employees do not deserve their jobs. Federal employees do not deserve their paychecks. And these are jobs that can be fired at will.
The American tax people.
You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene has a federal job. Does she produce any revenue for the country?
Nope. She also doesn't deserve it, to be fair
No.
to the argument.
No,
though.
you don't.
Good Lord.
But just come out and say it, I guess. All right, that's it for us this week.
Get More Smarter Podcast is a production of ColoradoPulse.com and the Big Horn Company. Your hosts are me, Ian Silverii, and America's dad,
Jason Bain,
who somehow figured out how to engineer and produce this thing. I make the video version sometimes, and Megan's been doing it lately, and I really, really appreciate that. Thanks, Megan. She does a lot of other stuff for us, too. The phenomenal Breakmaster Cylinder made the theme song. Get your shots while you still can. No, really, they're canceling the fucking flu shot because we live in hell. This week's review comes from the first one from YouTube. This comes from user Agni369, who writes, "Damn, I really thought this was maybe always sunny. Get More Smarter is a phrase they use sometimes. Even though I'm minorly disappointed, I'll give it a watch and a like." Well, that's not exactly what we were hoping for, but thanks for watching and throwing us a like.
Trying to make it as sunny as we can.
And in the meantime, our YouTube channel is like kind of blowing up. Go there and subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you got More Smarter, because it actually helps a lot. Find us at getmoresmarter.com, where you can find out for bonus content in our Substack. Go to Blue Sky and follow us around there too. And please send all your angry and non-angry rants to angryrants at getmoresmarter.com. Other shit to Ian at getmoresmarter.com, and other shit to Jason at getmoresmarter.com. Thank you to our guests this week or last week or whenever you're hearing this episode, Jeff Bridges, not the actor, the state senator. Thank you so much for listening or watching. We'll see you next time or hear ya.